I'm Anya, 28, standing on my private island, Nexus Haven, a $20 million testament to the empire I built from nothing. 20 years ago, my family, the Vanderhaas dynasty, called my dreams of AI and gaming fucking nonsense and ghosted me, erasing me from their gilded world. I was a survivor, clawing through rejection to create Nexus AI, a $2 billion tech giant. Then, after headlines screamed my success, their calls flooded in, their voices dripping with fake pride, begging for a piece of my island's fortune. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a raw, unfiltered revenge story that'll make you cheer. Tell me where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and stick around to see how I face them on my turf, exposing their hypocrisy in a showdown you won't forget. I'm standing on the edge of my own damn island, the Pacific's turquoise waves licking the shore like they're whispering my secrets back to me. But rewind 15 years, and I was just a kid drowning in the glitter of my family's Manhattan penthouse, a world of gold leaf ceilings and crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. The Vanderhaas name was a fortress. My father, Willem, built skyscrapers and broke men with the same cold precision. My cousins, Lars, Elise, and Margot, were his chosen heirs, their futures polished to a sheen at Wharton and Harvard, ready to inherit the real estate empire that owned half the city's skyline. Me? I was the crack in their perfect facade, the weird kid sketching game worlds on napkins while they sipped champagne with senators. I grew up in a cage, not the kind with bars, but one made of expectations and disdain. Our penthouse on the Upper East Side was a museum of wealth. Marble floors so shiny I could see my reflection, but never myself. Family dinners were performances, my father at the head of a mahogany table, barking about mergers, while my mother, Celeste, nodded in her pearls, her smile as curated as the art on our walls. Lars, Elise, and Margot were the stars, their every deal or degree celebrated like a royal decree. I'd sit there, pushing peas around my plate, my head full of code and AI dreams, games that could feel alive, stories that shifted with the player's choices. But to them, I was invisible, or worse, a glitch. I remember being 12, sneaking into my father's study to show him a game I'd coded on my school laptop, a clunky thing where a pixelated knight fought dragons. I was so proud, my hands shaking as I clicked through the levels. He barely looked up from his contracts. "Anya, this is childish nonsense," he said, his voice like gravel. "Focus on something real, like your cousins. Real estate is legacy." That word, legacy, hung over me like a guillotine. By 16, I was done trying to fit in. I'd spend galas hiding in corners, doodling game maps on cocktail napkins, while Elise charmed CEOs and Lars bragged about his internship. "Stop scribbling," my mother would hiss, her eyes darting to make sure no one noticed her defective daughter. The breaking point came when I was 20, a junior at NYU studying computer science on a scholarship I'd clawed my way into. We were at our annual gala, a black tie circus in the Waldorf's grand ballroom. The air smelled of orchids and ambition, chandeliers casting light like a spotlight on my family's perfection. I wore a borrowed dress that pinched my waist, feeling like an imposter among the Vanderhaas clan. After the toast, Lars got a standing ovation for closing a $10 million deal. I found my father by the bar, his suit sharp enough to cut glass. I took a deep breath, the napkin in my pocket crumpled from nervous gripping. "Dad, I'm not joining the company," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm starting a game studio with AI that can change storytelling. It's what I'm meant to do." The silence was worse than a slap. His eyes, cold as the ice in his whiskey, pinned me. Then he laughed, a sound that sliced through the chatter around us. "You're throwing away our legacy for fucking video games," he said, loud enough for heads to turn. "You're a disgrace, Anya. A fucking embarrassment to this family." My mother, standing nearby, didn't meet my eyes. Elise smirked, whispering something to Margot that made her giggle. Lars just sipped his drink, indifferent. I stood there, my face burning, the napkin in my pocket feeling like the only real thing in that room. That night, the calls stopped. No more texts about family dinners, no invites to the Hamptons for Thanksgiving, no seat at Elise's lavish wedding at the plaza a year later. I'd check my phone, hoping for a message, a sign they'd reconsider, but it was just silence. My name was erased from their world, like I'd been written in pencil and scrubbed out. I found out later they'd told relatives I was taking time to find myself, a polite lie to cover their shame. The Van der Haas legacy didn't include dreamers, only winners. I sat in my dorm that winter, staring at a photo from last year's gala, me in the background, clutching a napkin, while my family glowed center stage. The rejection cut deeper than I can describe, a raw ache that made my chest feel hollow. But in that hollow, something else grew, a fire, a need to prove I wasn't the failure they saw. I clutched that napkin, its edges frayed, the sketch of a game world I'd never shown anyone. It was all I had left of the girl who still believed she could be something. I was alone, ghosted by my own blood, but I swore I'd build a legacy they couldn't ignore. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started being a survivor. The silence from my family's rejection was still ringing in my ears when I packed my life into 2 duffel bags and moved to Brooklyn at 20. That napkin sketch from the Waldorf Gala, crumpled but unbroken, was tucked into my pocket like a talisman. I was Anya, the Van der Haas outcast, and I was done begging for their approval. With $10,000 from a scholarship and a laptop that wheezed like an old man, I threw myself into building Echoes of You, an AI-driven game that could read a player's emotions and weave stories that felt alive. But the startup world? It's a fucking graveyard, and I was digging my own plot. My office was a 100-square-foot room above a deli in Bushwick, the air thick with grease and desperation. I shared it with Zoe, an artist who paid her half of the $800 rent in half-finished canvases of brooding faces. The walls flaked paint, the single window rattled in the wind, and the Wi-Fi dropped every hour. I coded on a folding table, my laptop overheating as I tried to make my AI dream real. My team, Kai and Mia, 2 college dropouts I met at a coding meetup, had heart but barely knew JavaScript. We were a mess, eating instant noodles and sleeping on futons, our dreams bigger than our bank accounts. Failure hit like a freight train. Our first demo crashed during a pitch to a local accelerator, the screen freezing on a glitched night while investors yawned and checked their phones. I'd sunk $3,000 into that presentation, maxed out my first credit card, and all I got was a pat on the head. Cute idea, kid, but come back when it works. I cried in the shower that night, the water barely warm, wondering if my father was right. Maybe I was chasing nonsense. But his voice, that cold, "You're a disgrace," lit a fire in my gut. Fuck that. I wasn't going back to their gilded cage. The corporate drama cut deeper than I expected. I'd brought in Theo, my old NYU buddy from another blue blood family, as a partner. He had charm, connections, and a smile that could sell sand in a desert. I trusted him, stupid move. 6 months in, he leaked our AI prototype to a rival studio backed by his cousin's venture fund. I confronted him in a dive bar, the air sticky with beer and betrayal. "It's just business, Anya," he said, smirking over his whiskey. "Your little game's cute, but it's not a billion-dollar idea." I wanted to smash his glass, but instead I walked out, my hands shaking. I spent that night recoding from scratch, tears blurring the screen, swearing I'd never trust anyone with my dreams again. Money was a constant knife at my throat. I maxed out 2 more credit cards, took side gigs writing code for shady apps, and walked 3 miles to save bus fare. Zoe's paintings piled up in our cramped space, her chain smoking filling the air with a haze that matched my mood. Kai and Mia were loyal but green, their bugs slowing us down. I taught myself new languages, Python, TensorFlow, through free online courses, my eyes burning from 3 a.m. coding sessions. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every dollar I saved was a middle finger to my family, a step toward proving I didn't need their name. Then came a flicker of hope. I stumbled into a free tech workshop at a Brooklyn library, the kind with stale coffee and folding chairs. The speaker was Dr. Lila Patel, an AI pioneer with a no-bullshit vibe and eyes that saw through you. Her talk on neural networks sparked something in me, and I stayed late, asking about adaptive algorithms for gaming. She raised an eyebrow. That's a sharp question, kid. Most people here are just chasing buzzwords. You in the field? I spilled my story, not the family drama, but the startup grind, the demo flops, Theo's betrayal. She listened, her coffee going cold, then said, "You've got fire, Anya. Don't let the bastards snuff it out. Come to my hackathon next month." That hackathon was my lifeline. I teamed up with strangers, our fingers flying over keyboards in a sweaty NYU basement. We built a prototype that made Echoes of You sing, a character that shifted its dialogue based on a player's tone. We didn't win, but a coder from Google whispered, "This is next level." Lila pulled me aside after. "You see what others miss," she said. "Keep going. I'll send you some contacts." Her words were oxygen in a room where I'd been suffocating. I went home, stared at that napkin sketch from the gala, and felt something shift. My family had ghosted me, but I wasn't alone anymore. Lila's belief, Kai and Mia's loyalty, it was enough to keep me fighting. I wasn't out of the graveyard yet. The tech world was a shark tank, and I was bleeding. VCs laughed me out of meetings. No track record, sweetheart. And rivals spread rumors that our AI was smoke and mirrors. But every rejection, every late-night bug fix was a brick in my foundation. I wasn't just building a game. I was building myself, a survivor clawing out of the dirt my family buried me in. That napkin, now taped to my monitor, wasn't just a sketch. It was a map to a future they couldn't touch. 3 years after my family's rejection left me bleeding in Brooklyn's startup graveyard, I was still clawing my way forward, a survivor fueled by rage and that crumpled napkin sketch taped to my monitor. I'm Anya, and at 23, I stood at the edge of a San Francisco tech conference, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The hackathon Dr. Lila Patel sent me to had lit a fire, and now, Echoes of You, my AI-driven game that could read a player's emotions, was ready for its big shot. My hands shook as I set up our demo on a borrowed monitor, its screen flickering in a cavernous convention hall, buzzing with coders, venture capitalists, and the kind of egos that could choke a room. Kai and Mia, my loyal but still green team, flanked me, their faces as pale as mine. This was it. Our chance to prove I wasn't the disgrace my father called me. The hall smelled of coffee and ambition, startup booths flashing neon logos while drones hummed overhead, showcasing some overhyped AR gimmick. Our setup was pathetic by comparison. A wobbly table, a second-hand laptop, and a poster Kai had slapped together in Photoshop. But Echoes of You was my heart poured into code. A game where characters adapted to your voice, your mood, crafting stories that felt like they knew you. I'd spent months refining it, sleepless nights debugging in our Bushwick loft. Fueled by Lila's words, "You see what others miss." Theo's betrayal, stealing my prototype, had nearly broken me, but I'd rebuilt it stronger. Every line of code a fuck you to him and my family. The demo started, and I held my breath. A volunteer, a lanky coder with a man bun, sat down, his skeptical grin fading as our AI character, a weathered knight, responded to his sarcastic, "I'm bored," with a quip. "Then let's hunt a dragon to wake you up." The crowd gasped, phones out, live streams lighting up. When he whispered, "I'm kinda lonely," the knight's tone softened. offering a quest to find a lost companion. The room erupted in cheers, and I felt my knees buckle, not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in years: being seen. For the first time since my family ghosted me, I wasn't invisible. I was still buzzing when a woman in a tailored blazer approached, her eyes sharp as the stilettos clicking on the concrete floor. Cassandra Reed, a venture capitalist with a reputation for betting on underdogs, handed me her card. "That demo wasn't just a game, Anya," she said, her voice low, cutting through the crowd's hum. "It's a revolution. Let's talk." Over beers at the conference bar, I learned she'd clashed with my father, Willem, years ago, a shady deal where he'd screwed her out of a property. The irony wasn't lost on me. She grilled me on Echoes of Use tech, my vision, and my team. "You're not just a coder," she said. "You're a disruptor. I'm in $5 million. Build it." I nearly dropped my glass, my mind racing. This was the lifeline I'd been bleeding for. That investment changed everything. We moved from our leaky Bushwick loft to a real office in Soho, with actual windows and Wi-Fi that didn't die mid-commit. Kai and Mia stepped up, and we hired 3 coders who could keep up with my pace. I leaned on Lila's contacts, diving into AI forums and late-night calls with engineers across time zones. Echoes of You launched 6 months later, hitting 1 million downloads in weeks. TechCrunch called it a game changer for interactive storytelling, and we won Innovation of the Year at the Global Game Awards. I stood on that stage in London, gripping the award, the spotlight hot on my face, and felt like I'd finally climbed out of the abyss my family had shoved me into. But the high came with a shadow. That night, alone in my hotel room, I sent my father a text. "We won. Thought you should know." I stared at my phone, waiting for a reply that never came. The silence stung worse than his words ever had. My cousins, Lars, Elise, Margot, were probably toasting some new deal at the Hamptons, my name still scrubbed from their world. I clutched that napkin sketch, its edges frayed from years of handling, and felt the old ache creep back. Why didn't they care? I'd built something real, something that mattered, but to them, I was still nothing. Cassandra's money wasn't just cash, it was freedom. We scaled Nexus AI, my company, from a scrappy startup to a contender. I hired a CTO who'd worked at Google, and Mia, bless her, learned to debug like a pro. But the tech world was still a Shark Tank. Rivals spread rumors that our AI was overhyped, and VCs who'd rejected me now wanted meetings, their smiles as fake as Theo's promises. Lila kept me grounded, her voice crackling through late-night calls. "They'll try to tear you down, Anya. Keep your eyes on the code." I did, pouring my pain into Echoes of You's next update, making it smarter, bolder. Every download, every award was a brick in the empire I was building, a legacy my family couldn't touch. Standing in that Soho office, watching my team celebrate our first 1 million users, I felt like a survivor who'd clawed through the dark. The napkin sketch, now framed on my desk, wasn't just a relic of my childhood dreams. It was proof I'd been right to keep going. My family's rejection had been my crucible, forging me into someone they'd never see coming. But as I looked out at the city skyline, I knew the real test was still ahead. Success was loud, and I could feel the vultures circling. 5 years after that San Francisco conference turned my world upside down, I stood on the balcony of my new Soho office, the New York skyline glittering like a challenge I'd finally met. I'm Anya, 28 now, and Nexus AI, my scrappy dream born in a Brooklyn loft, had just gone public. The IPO was a circus, Wall Street traders chanting my name, my face splashed across Forbes with the headline, "Anya van der Haas, the outcast who conquered tech." At $2 billion, my company wasn't just a game studio anymore. It was a force, its AI powering everything from blockbuster films to therapy apps and car voice assistants. I'd clawed my way out of the graveyard my family buried me in, a survivor who'd turned their rejection into rocket fuel. But even with the world cheering, the silence from them still cut deep. The IPO day was chaos, a blur of flashing cameras and champagne toasts in a glass-walled boardroom. My team, Kai, Mia, and our new CTO, Lena, who ditched Google to join us, grinned like kids who'd won the lottery. We'd done it. Echoes of You had millions of users. Its AI was so smart it could predict a player's next move before they did. TechCrunch called us the future of storytelling, and licensing deals with Sony and Tesla were pouring in. I wore a tailored blazer, my old thrift store jeans long gone, but I kept that napkin sketch from the Waldorf Gala framed on my desk. Its faded lines a reminder of the girl who dreamed this up while her family laughed. With the money came power, and I used it to build something my family never could, a company where no one felt invisible. Nexus AI's office was a far cry from our Bushwick dump. Open plan, with skylights flooding the space with sun, beanbags for brainstorming, and a kitchen stocked with real coffee, not instant sludge. I made sure every coder, every intern got their moment. Birthdays meant cakes, not ignored emails. Ideas, even crazy ones, got a whiteboard and a chance. When Mia pitched a new AI feature that sounded nuts, a character that could learn a player's fears, I didn't shut her down like my father would have. We built it, and it doubled our downloads. This wasn't just a business. It was the family I'd never had, one that saw me for me. The biggest fuck you to my past came when I bought Nexus Haven, a 10-acre island off Belize. I found it on a whim, scrolling real estate listings after a 16-hour coding session. My eyes bleary, but my heart racing. The photos showed turquoise waves, jungle thickets, and beaches that glowed under the moon. It wasn't just a hideaway. It was my middle finger to the Van der Haas empire, proof I didn't need their name to own something real. I sank $20 million into it, turning it into a sanctuary, glass-walled labs for my team, bungalows with hammocks swaying in the breeze, and a main house with a library stuffed with sci-fi novels I'd loved as a kid. It was my Beauty and the Beast dream, minus the beast, a place where I could breathe without the weight of my family's disdain. I flew down alone the first time, landing on a dirt strip as the sun set, the air thick with salt and possibility. Walking the island's paths, I felt like I'd finally outrun the shadows of that Manhattan penthouse. I built a fire pit by the shore, where my team would later roast marshmallows during R&D retreats. Every palm tree, every lab humming with servers, screamed independence. But at night, in my bungalow with its open windows and ocean hum, the old wounds crept in. I'd sit on the porch, twisting that napkin sketch in my hands, its ink smudged from years of clinging to it. Why hadn't they called? My father, my mother, my cousins, Lars, Elise, Margot. They'd seen the headlines, the IPO, the Forbes cover. Yet my phone stayed silent, just like it had for 20 years. The tech world wasn't done testing me. Rivals tried to poach Lena, spreading lies that our AI was unstable. VCs who'd once laughed me out of meetings now begged for board seats, their smiles as fake as the Rolexes at industry galas. I navigated it with Lila's voice in my head. Keep your eyes on the code. We landed a $200 million contract with the film studio to adapt our AI for interactive scripts, and I poured the profits into hiring more dreamers, coders, artists, even a therapist to make sure my team didn't burn out like I nearly had. Nexus AI wasn't just a company. It was a mission to prove that you could win without crushing others, a direct rebuke to my family's cutthroat legacy. But success was a lonely companion. Back in New York, I'd walk into my Tribeca loft, sleek with views of the Hudson, and feel the emptiness settle in. The fridge held takeout I didn't eat. The walls displayed art I barely noticed. I'd scroll social media in weak moments, seeing Lars's posts about Van der Haas forever at some gala, my mother's perfect smile beside him. No mention of me, ever. I sent one last email to my father after the IPO, a single line. We made it. No reply. The napkin sketch, now framed beside my bed, was my only anchor. a fragile thread to the girl who'd believed she could be enough. I wasn't prepared for what came next. The headlines, Anya Vanderhaas's island empire, spread like wildfire, and with them, the first message in years. Lars texting, "Proud of you, cousin." My stomach twisted. After 20 years of silence, they'd smelled the money. The survivor in me, the one who'd coded through tears and betrayal, knew this was no reunion. It was a reckoning, and I was ready. I'm Anya, 28, and I thought the high of Nexus AI's $2 billion IPO and my Belize island, Nexus Haven, had finally buried the ghosts of my family's rejection. But as I stood in my Tribeca loft, the Hudson River glinting outside my floor-to-ceiling windows, my phone buzzed with a message that ripped open old wounds. It was Lars, my cousin, after 20 years of silence. "Proud of you, cousin. Let's reconnect." I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold, the napkin sketch from that long-ago Waldorf gala sitting framed on my desk. The Vanderhaas family, who'd called me a disgrace and erased me from their world, had smelled blood, my money, and the vultures were circling. The headlines hit first, like a tidal wave across every major outlet. Forbes screamed, "Anya Vanderhaas's island empire," with a glossy photo of me on Nexus Haven's beach, the Jungle Labs glowing behind me. TechCrunch ran a profile on Echoes of You, calling it the AI that's rewriting entertainment. My inbox overflowed with interview requests, but it was the personal messages that made my stomach churn. Aunt Clara, who'd once told me to stop embarrassing the family, sent an email. "Darling, we're so thrilled for your success. Coffee soon?" Then my mother, Celeste, left a voicemail, her voice dripping with a warmth I didn't recognize. "Anya, it's Mom. We've missed you. Can we talk?" I played it 3 times, each word a needle in my chest. Missed me. They hadn't sent a single text in 2 decades. Not when I graduated from NYU, not when I won my first award. The final blow was my father, Willem, the man who'd called my dreams fucking nonsense. His call came late one night, my loft dark except for the glow of my laptop. "Anya," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "We're proud of you. Let's meet. It's been too long." Proud? The word tasted like ash. I stood by my window, the city's lights blurring as I gripped that napkin sketch. Its ink faded but still sharp with memory. I knew why they were crawling back. Vanderhaas Properties was crumbling. Lars's gambling debts, my father's over-leveraged deals, a market crash that stripped their empire bare. They saw my island, my billions, and thought I was their golden ticket. I didn't reply right away. Each message felt like a betrayal dressed up as love, their sudden interest as calculated as the boardroom deals they'd once celebrated without me. I scrolled through social media, a habit I'd tried to kick, and found Lars's latest post. A photo from their Hamptons estate, captioned, "Vanderhaas forever." No trace of me, just like always. I remembered the gala when I was 20, my father's laugh echoing as he called me a disgrace. Now they wanted to reconnect. It was laughable, but it hurt like hell. A wound that hadn't healed despite my Forbes cover and private jet. I sat at my desk, the napkin sketch under my fingers, and felt the survivor in me stir. I'd built Nexus AI from nothing, survived Theo's betrayal, and fought off VCs who dismissed me as a nobody. I wasn't the kid they'd ghosted anymore, but a small, stupid part of me, that girl who'd once hoped for their approval, wanted to hear them out. Maybe they'd changed, maybe they'd apologize. So when a family friend, some lawyer they'd roped into playing middleman, emailed about a reunion on my island, I said yes. Not because I believed their bullshit, but because I needed to face them, to see what they really wanted. Planning the meeting was like preparing for war. I flew them out on my jet, a deliberate flex, let them see what I'd built without them. I pictured them stepping onto Nexus Haven, gawking at the glass labs where my team coded under palm trees, the bungalows where we dreamed up the future. I'd host them in the main house, its open-air pavilion overlooking the ocean, a far cry from their stuffy Manhattan boardrooms. But I wasn't naive. I knew this wasn't about love. They wanted a piece of my empire, and I was ready to draw a line in the sand. The night before they arrived, I sat on my island's beach, the waves lapping at my feet, the air heavy with salt and jasmine. My team was back in New York, pushing our next AI update, but I was alone, the napkin sketch in my pocket like a shield. I thought of Lila, my mentor, who'd told me to keep my eyes on the code when the world tried to tear me down. I thought of Kai and Mia, who'd stuck with me through the lean years. They were my family now, not the vultures landing tomorrow. But as I stared at the stars, I felt the weight of 20 years, every ignored birthday, every gala I wasn't invited to. I'd built an empire, but the ache of their rejection still lingered. A ghost I couldn't outrun. I pulled out my phone and opened Lars's text again. "Proud of you, cousin." The words mocked me, as fake as the smiles at their galas. I didn't need their pride, but I needed closure. Tomorrow, on my island, I'd face them. Not as the kid they'd cast out, but as Anya van der Haas, the woman who'd built a legacy they couldn't touch. The survivor in me was ready, and whatever they were bringing, I'd be damned if I let them take anything from me again. I'm Anya, 28, and I'd spent 20 years carrying the weight of my family's rejection. But as I stood on the sun-drenched deck of Nexus Haven, my private island off Belize, I felt the survivor in me take over. The van der Haas clan, my father Willem, mother Celeste, cousins Lars, Elise, and Margot, stepped off my jet onto the tarmac, their eyes wide at the jungle-fringed labs and turquoise waves. They'd ghosted me for 2 decades, called my dreams fucking nonsense. But now, with my $2 billion empire splashed across Forbes, they'd come crawling for a piece. I'd agreed to this reunion not out of hope, but to face the ghosts head-on. The napkin sketch from that Waldorf gala, still in my pocket, was my anchor as I prepared to lay their hypocrisy bare. The air was thick with salt and tension as I led them to the main house, its open-air pavilion framed by palms, the ocean glinting like a challenge. They gawked at the glass-walled labs where my team coded, the bungalows glowing under the midday sun. Willem, his hair grayer than I remembered, adjusted his cufflinks, trying to look unimpressed. Celeste clutched her pearls, her smile brittle. Lars, heavier now, flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes, while Elise and Margot, in designer dresses, whispered to each other, appraising my wealth. I wore jeans and a linen shirt, deliberately casual, my power in the island itself, not some borrowed gown. Dinner was a performance, served under a canopy of stars, the table set with local seafood and wine I'd picked from a vineyard I'd visited in Tuscany. They made small talk, their voices dripping with a warmth I knew was fake. "This place is incredible, Anya," Celeste said, her eyes darting to the infinity pool. "We've missed you, missed me." I nearly laughed, the words as hollow as the penthouse I'd grown up in. Lars chimed in, "You've done well, cousin." Really proud, I sipped my wine, the napkin sketch burning a hole in my pocket, and waited for the real reason they'd flown 2,000 miles. It came after dessert, as the ocean's hum filled the silence. Willem cleared his throat, his voice smooth as ever. "Anya, the family business is struggling. Bad investments, market shifts, things are tight. We need $50 million to stabilize van der Haas properties. You could join the board, be part of the legacy again." Elise nodded, her smile practiced. It'd be great for the family, especially the kids' future. Kids I'd never met dangled like bait. Lars leaned in. "Your AI could make our properties smart, revolutionary." The audacity hit like a punch. They'd erased me for 20 years, and now they wanted my money and my tech to save their sinking ship. I set my glass down, my heart steady despite the rage bubbling inside. "Legacy?" I said, my voice calm but sharp, like the edge of a blade. I pulled out my tablet, its screen glowing in the dim light. Let's talk about legacy. I swiped to a photo from their last Hamptons gala, captioned Vanderhaas forever. No trace of me. This was 2 years after you ghosted me, I said, my tone conversational but deadly. You, Mom, Lars, Elise, Margot, all there. Cousin Jessica even flew in from London. I flipped to another, their 50th anniversary party. Nothing better than family, right, Mom? Except I wasn't invited. Their faces froze, Celeste's eyes darting to Willem, who shifted uncomfortably. I kept going, pulling up an email from Willem, sent when I was 22. Games are for losers, Anya. Do something worthwhile. I read it aloud, each word a hammer. You sent this after I told you about my first demo. I was sleeping on a futon, eating ramen, but I still sent you a Christmas card that year. You never replied. Lars looked at his plate. Elise's smile vanished, and Margot's hands clenched. I showed a text from Elise to a friend, accidentally CC'd to me. Anya's such a weirdo with her gamer crap. Glad she's out of the picture. For 20 years, I said, leaning forward, meeting their eyes one by one. You lived like I didn't exist. Holidays, weddings, births. I was nothing. You called me a disgrace, a failure. Now you walk into my home, onto my island, and ask for $50 million for a piece of my company. Go to hell. The words landed like a storm, the pavilion silent except for the waves. Willem's face reddened, but he stayed quiet. Celeste's eyes welled up. Whether from guilt or frustration, I couldn't tell. Lars muttered something about misunderstandings, but I cut him off. I built this, I said, gesturing to the island, the labs, the life I'd carved from nothing. Without your name, your money, or your approval. You don't get to claim it now. I stood, my voice softening but firm. I'm done with your legacy. It's built on greed, not family. Leave tomorrow. My team will arrange the jet. They sat, stunned, as I walked to the edge of the pavilion, the ocean's roar matching the pulse in my veins. That night, alone in my bungalow, I sat on the porch, the napkin sketch in my hands. The stars above Nexus Haven glittered, and I let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. I'd faced the ghosts who'd haunted me for 20 years and sent them packing. The survivor in me, the one who'd coded through tears and betrayal, felt lighter, but the ache of their rejection lingered. I wasn't their daughter or cousin anymore. I was Anya, and this island, this empire, was mine. The reckoning was over, but the real freedom was just beginning. I'm Anya, 28, and as I stood on the shore of Nexus Haven, my private island, watching the jet carrying my family vanish into the Belizean horizon, I felt the weight of 20 years lift. The Vanderhaas clan, Willem, Celeste, Lars, Elise, Margot, had come begging for a piece of my $2 billion empire, their faces pale as I laid bare their betrayal with that tablet slideshow. I'd sent them away empty-handed, their pleas for $50 million to save their crumbling legacy met with my calm, cutting refusal. Go to hell. The napkin sketch from that long-ago Waldorf gala, still in my pocket, wasn't just a relic anymore. It was proof I'd survived their rejection and built something they couldn't touch. I was no longer the kid they'd ghosted. I was a survivor, and I was free. The morning after they left, I walked the island's paths alone, the jungle humming with life, the turquoise waves lapping at the shore like a heartbeat. Nexus Haven wasn't just a middle finger to my family's empire. It was my sanctuary, its glass-walled labs and bungalows alive with my team's dreams. I sat by the fire pit, the one we'd built for late-night coding retreats, and pulled out that napkin sketch. Its faded lines, drawn when I was 16 and hiding from their galas, held the first spark of echoes of you. For years, I'd carried it like a wound, a reminder of their disdain. Now, it felt like a medal, proof I'd been right to bet on myself when no one else did. I didn't regret a damn thing. Turning them away was like shedding chains I hadn't realized I was still wearing. Their rejection had once broken me, those silent years, the ignored texts, the galas where I didn't exist. But standing there with the ocean breeze tangling my hair, I saw it clearly. Their failure to love me was their flaw, not mine. I'd spent my life trying to prove I was worthy, coding through tears, building Nexus AI to show I wasn't the disgrace Willem called me. But I didn't need their approval anymore. I never had. That realization sparked something new. Nexus Haven wasn't just for me or my team. It could be a beacon for others like me, the ones told they weren't enough. I called Lila Patel, my mentor, that afternoon, her voice crackling through the phone as I paced the beach. They showed up, Lila, after 20 years, wanting my money. I told them to shove it. She laughed, a warm, throaty sound. You've got more guts than I did at your age, Anya. What's next? I told her my plan. Turn the island into Nexus Haven Academy, a place to mentor young dreamers, kids from broken homes, outcasts, anyone society wrote off. You're building a legacy, she said. Not their kind, yours. I poured $30 million into the academy, transforming the island's east wing into dorms and workshops. We'd trained coders, artists, innovators, people who, like me, had been told their dreams were nonsense. I hired mentors, not just tech gurus, but therapists and storytellers, to teach resilience as much as code. The first class arrived 6 months later, 20 kids with fire in their eyes, their stories echoing mine. Rejected, underestimated, but hungry. I saw myself in them. The girl who'd coded in a Bushwick loft, eating ramen to survive. When one, a 17-year-old named Jada, showed me her AI prototype, I didn't dismiss her bugs. I sat with her, debugging until dawn, the way Lila had with me. My real family grew around me. Lila, now a friend as much as a mentor, flew down for the academy's opening, her kids running wild on the beach. Kai and Mia, my ride-or-die coders from the lean years, were now leading teams at Nexus AI, their loyalty worth more than any Vonderhaus gala. Lena, our CTO, became my confidant, her dry humor pulling me through late-night strategy sessions. We weren't just a company, we were a tribe, bound by trust, not blood. Back in New York, I joined a support group for family estrangement, meeting others who knew the sting of being erased. One night, a woman named Sarah said, "Family is who shows up when you're at your lowest." I looked around that circle, then at my life, and realized I'd found mine. The island became my anchor. I'd walk its paths at sunrise, the labs humming with code, the kids' laughter drifting from the dorms. I'd sit by the fire pit, the napkin sketch now framed in my office, and feel a peace I'd never known. My family's rejection had been my crucible, forging me into someone stronger than their legacy ever was. I didn't need their penthouse or their name. I had Nexus Haven, my team, these kids. A legacy built on grit, not greed. To anyone out there feeling ghosted, whether by family or the world, hear this. Their rejection isn't your worth. It's your fucking runway. I built an empire from a napkin and a dream. Through betrayals and nights when I thought I'd break. You can too. Find your people, the ones who see your spark when others see failure. Build something so big it drowns out their silence. As I watched the sunset paint Nexus Haven gold, I knew I wasn't just a survivor. I was unstoppable, and my legacy was just beginning. If my story resonates with you, I want to hear yours. Have you ever been ghosted by family, a friend, or the world? Only to rise stronger. Drop your thoughts below. What kept you going? What set you free? Thank you for walking this journey with me, for seeing the scars and the spark that got me here. I'm grateful for every one of you. Until next time, keep building your own empire, and don't let anyone dim your light.